So you guys probably are going to have trouble believing this, but somebody was wrong on the internet. If you look at the Wikipedia article for aquariums, up at the top there's an entry for antiquity that says, in the Roman Empire, the first fish to be brought indoors was the sea barbel, which was kept under guest beds in a small tank made of marble. Citation needed. Introductions of glass panes around the year 50 AD allowed Romans to replace one wall of marble tanks, improving their view of the fish. Now, I don't know why it says citation needed, because there's a citation given, and it's Brent Brunner's The Ocean at Home, which is a book that's supposed to be on aquarium history and other things that guy found interesting. And this particular part of the book was taken pretty much word for word from Die Ark Mostar by Herman Mostar. And Mostar seems to have just made the fact up because he thought it was fun. Because he gives no indication of where he got it from. He doesn't source it anywhere. And while Brunner does say, allegedly they did this, he really shouldn't have used it at all, because Mostar's Ark is full of other weird gibberish claims. Like, not to the degree of, like, they kept unicorns in their attics, but, you know, they claimed that they were breeding eels in these small marble tanks with no filtration underneath people's beds. It's a problematic claim. And if you ignore the fact that this is a claim from absolutely no sources at all, it is questionable if you know anything about Roman history. And I don't think that I'm the first person to realize this, first because other people have actually written very well-researched articles on this, but also because people have gone in and done weird troll edits of this particular piece. So, one of them is, in the Roman Empire, the first Japanese spider crab to be brought indoors was the Barbie fish, which was kept under guest beds in small tanks made of human bones. The introduction of glass panes around the year 50 AD allowed Romans to replace one wall of marble tanks, improving their view of the prisoners. Sometimes the ancient French put several angry sharks in tanks and watched as they fought each other. A popular fish chant is "Go Jimmy." Unfortunately, somebody has undone that edit. I don't think that edit is any less historically accurate than what is there now. You may be familiar with Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius. In 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius blew, and it covered Pompeii completely. And we have a very good snapshot of Roman culture because of that. And for those of you that are following along, 79 AD comes after 50 AD. So, if people had amazing marble fish tanks, it would have spread to the aristocracy of Pompeii by this time, because that kind of thing spread pretty rapidly for weird, fantastical stuff. And there's none of those there, anywhere. What there were large concrete ponds that they used to keep European eels in. Some people would also keep lampreys, and there are some references to some rather twisted aristocrats throwing slaves in and laughing gleefully as the eels and lampreys tore the slaves apart. James Higginbottom went into the area and did a really big research project on these ponds. He wrote a book about it called Piscinae. It's an interesting read. It's worth looking at if you're somebody that's into history. Obviously, you're probably into fish if you're watching this, so it's a good crossover. And he goes through the things that they did and the things that were there, and, you know, they would have these monstrous concrete ponds, or sometimes they would be carved directly out of the bedrock, and they would keep eels and lampreys just to look at, Sometimes they would, make a show of having them, and when guests would come over, they would pick one out and have this fresh fish to serve to their guests, which was rather impressive. And a couple people had them that were large enough to extend, a little way into the dining area, but they weren't indoor things. There's no record of anything indoor. The only record anywhere of fish being kept inside in Roman culture, live, is in a writer that references Archimedes building a device into a large merchant ship, I'm guessing the Syracusia, that had sort of a reverse Archimedes screw. If you don't know what an Archimedes screw is, it's a very simple pump where you turn a crank and a screw brings water up. So they did that in reverse. It brings water into the ship, keeps fresh water in this giant lead box that they would make, and this allowed them to keep fish alive while they transported them to other markets, because fresh fish is worth more. And this is kind of a weird claim to have someplace, except that we've found some of these ships. So that's the only thing that's really comparable to an aquarium in any sort of writing anywhere. And even if you ignore that, there wasn't really the technology to do this. I mean, they started adding glass to their windows sometime around this time, but it wasn't really see-through. Before this, they used wooden shutters, or they used stretched animal hide over wooden frames, and they would let a little light in, but it wasn't really a big thing. It wasn't what they were designed for. So about this time, they started adding glass to windows in bathhouses. It slowly moved on to the really wealthy people having glass windows. But these were, blown glass cylinders that were cut and flattened out. They were flattened over sand, so one half of them was really rough. You couldn't really see anything through it. They would have broken if you tried to use them to hold water, like in an aquarium. So everything about this claim is just completely absurd and ridiculous. But somebody read a book and decided that, book must be good, so they keep putting it back in here over and over and over again. And it's problematic because this bit of non-history is starting to show up in other places. You can search the internet, and lots of other places now list this in their aquarium history things because people assume that Wikipedia is right, and it's very frequently not. Another good example of Wikipedia being wrong is if you look up BET theory, I think it is, there's an entry down in the bottom where they're measuring the surface area of concrete of some sort, and the entry says something like, if you follow this equation, this is what you get for the concrete. This other page over here has a completely erroneous and wrong number on it. Well, why didn't you go fix it? They didn't fix it because Wikipedia is now someplace where somebody adopts a page and undoes anything that they don't like. It's still a good place to go find interesting things, but you can't really rely on things on there being true, unfortunately. This is a big problem. This kind of misinformation is a big problem. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make kind of an automated robot that's going to go through the internet, and it's just going to look for bad information, and it's going to mark it so that you know that it... What? Google? Really? Alright, well, I've just been told that Google is already working on that, and since they have people that are, what's the word? Competent, I guess I'll leave that to them. And I guess what I'll do is I'll make really stupid videos on the internet that nobody cares about or watches, because that's probably going to make a big difference, right? I think so.